Well, I can't speak for anybody else, obviously, but I would say the pressures are pretty much the same, other than, obviously, for the Prince of Wales, there's a sort of different set of pressures. But I mean, basically, the public spotlight is so bright and so glaring that you can't avoid it, really.
Fans who for years believed that King Charles controlled the family's most secret inheritance were left shocked when palace insiders revealed an unexpected twist. For a long time, people said Charles was in charge of a legacy too delicate to share and too important to split. But now, lawyers representing Prince Edward have come forward with documents that suggest a very different story. So, was the truth there all along, hiding in plain sight? Or has the monarchy just been rocked by a secret that has been building for decades? The promise of a title. It was June 1999. And there was a feeling of joy and excitement around Prince Edward. He was about to marry Sophie Rhys-Jones, the woman he loved. Wedding plans were moving fast. The public was watching closely, and the royal family was busy organizing every detail. Everything seemed happy and peaceful.
Still ahead, the crowds gathered outside St. George's get their first look at the newlyweds, and the new Countess talks about the inevitable comparisons between herself.
But behind the scenes, something happened that would quietly affect Edward's future in a big way. As Edward and Sophie prepared for marriage, Prince Philip entered the room. Philip was known for being direct. He did not waste time on long talks or polite small talk. In an interview with the Daily Telegraph, Sophie later explained that he came straight to the point. He wanted them to think seriously about something important. His idea surprised them. Philip asked Edward to consider becoming the next Duke of Edinburgh one day. Edward had always believed his older brother, Prince Andrew, would receive that title. That seemed like the natural choice. But Philip had a different plan. To Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh title meant much more than a name. It stood for decades of hard work and service, especially through the Duke of Edinburgh's award, which he deeply cared about. He wanted someone he trusted to continue that work. He believed Edward was the right person, would one day receive the Duke of Edinburgh title, but only after Philip's title returned to the crown. In simple terms, after Philip died and the title was free again, it would eventually go to Edward. This was not a casual promise. It was supported by senior members of the royal family and confirmed publicly. To many people, it sounded final and official. Few imagined it would take more than 20 years to sort out. For the time being, Edward accepted a smaller title. He became the Earl of Wessex. The name was inspired by the film Shakespeare in Love, released in 1998. The title had a romantic, historical feel, and Edward accepted it patiently, knowing something bigger was expected later. Years passed. Edward carried out his royal duties quietly and faithfully. In August 2017, Philip retired from public duties at age 96 after a long life of service. Edward continued supporting causes linked to his father's legacy. Then, in April 2021, Philip died at 99. It was the end of an era and a deeply sad moment for the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. Naturally, people began asking about the Duke of Edinburgh title. By law, when Philip died, the title did not automatically go to Edward. It passed to the monarch's eldest son. At that time, it went to Charles III, who was then Prince of Wales. The understanding was that Charles would later recreate the title and officially give it to Edward. Recreating a title means the monarch issues it again to someone else. In September 2022, after the death of Elizabeth II, Charles became king. Many royal titles changed during that time, and once again, the future of the Duke of Edinburgh title seemed uncertain. Philip's death, and then the Queen's passing, brought a time of deep sadness and big changes for the royal family. But did these events mean Edward would once again be passed over? Was Charles planning to change long-standing royal traditions in a strong and different way? Or was there tension behind palace walls? Let's look more closely at what was really happening. Royal family conflict. Between April 2021 and March 2023, While the world watched the British royal family attend ceremonies and smile for cameras, a quiet but powerful family struggle was unfolding behind palace doors. From the outside, everything looked steady and respectful. There were grand funerals, state events, speeches, and perfectly timed photographs. But beneath the polished surface, old emotions were beginning to stir again. At the center of this silent tension stood King Charles III and his youngest brother, Prince Edward. According to royal biographers, Charles carried a deep ache from childhood. He reportedly felt that his father, Prince Philip, had been distant and demanding with him. Charles believed he was often judged rather than understood. Philip, a former naval officer with a tough personality, expected strength and discipline. Young Charles, sensitive and thoughtful, struggled under that pressure. But things seemed different with Edward. As the youngest child, Edward saw another side of his father. Philip appeared softer, more relaxed, even playful. He read to Edward, laughed with him, and spent time enjoying simple father and son moments. To Charles, it may have felt like he had missed out on that warmth. These early memories likely stayed with him for decades. Even as Charles grew older, became Prince of Wales, and prepared his entire life to wear the crown, those childhood feelings may never have fully faded. One biographer, Tom Bower, found it striking that a man in his 70s could still feel hints of jealousy toward his younger brother. After all, Edward was never a rival for the throne. He lived a relatively quiet royal life, avoided major scandals, and stayed out of political drama. But emotions are rarely logical. Old wounds can remain tender even after many years. The tension grew more serious in July 2021, just months after Prince Philip passed away in April 2021. For years, many believed Philip wanted Edward to inherit his title, Duke of Edinburgh. Edward himself seemed to prepare for that future, supporting charities linked to the title and honoring his father's legacy. Then reports surfaced that Charles had decided not to give Edward the Duke of Edinburgh title. According to the Times, unnamed palace sources claimed the decision was already made. One insider reportedly said the choice belonged entirely to Charles, and that Edward would not receive the title. The news shocked royal watchers. Many had assumed the transition would happen automatically. Adding to the confusion, Clarence House released a statement suggesting that nothing had been finalized. They described the reports as speculation. The public was left wondering, had Edward truly lost his father's title, or was the door still open? Charles defended his position by speaking about his plan for a slimmed-down monarchy. His goal, he explained, was to reduce the number of senior working royals holding major titles. According to a courtier quoted by the Daily Mail, Charles believed granting the Duke of Edinburgh title to Edward did not fit this vision. The title would not only belong to Edward, it would later pass to Edward's son, James, keeping the line active for another generation. Yet critics quickly pointed out what seemed like inconsistencies. In 2018, Charles had supported his younger son, Prince Harry, receiving the Duke of Sussex title when he married Meghan Markle. Even after Harry stepped back from royal duties, he kept the title. Similarly, Prince Andrew retained the Duke of York title, despite the controversy surrounding his association with Jeffrey Epstein. These examples led some observers to question whether the slimmed-down monarchy explanation was being applied evenly or whether Edward's case was different for more personal reasons. Then, in November 2022, shortly after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and Charles's official rise to the throne, another surprising rumor surfaced. Reports suggested that Buckingham Palace was considering giving the Duke of Edinburgh title to Princess Charlotte instead. Charlotte, the daughter of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, represented the next generation of royals. The idea shocked many people because the title was so strongly connected to Philip's long life of public service. Eventually, Prince Edward spoke about the situation in an interview with the BBC. He admitted that becoming Duke of Edinburgh had once been discussed long ago, almost like a wish his father had quietly hoped for. But Edward described it as a pipe dream, something that sounded hopeful, but was never guaranteed. Behind the grand titles and public statements, the story revealed something deeply human. Even inside palaces, family relationships can be complicated. Crowns may shine brightly, but old feelings, especially between brothers, can linger in the shadows for a lifetime. Although Edward spoke in a calm and respectful way, there seemed to be a quiet note of disappointment beneath his words. It was subtle, but hard to ignore. But why didn't he receive the title that so many people believed had been set aside for him? What changed later that led to the title finally being granted? Let's take a closer look and uncover what really happened. Duke of Edinburgh title. On March 10, 2023, Prince Edward turned 59. It should have been a calm and cheerful birthday, the kind filled with warm messages, private family smiles, and perhaps a quiet celebration behind palace walls. But instead of being remembered as a simple birthday, the day quickly became one of the most discussed moments in recent royal history. That same day, Buckingham Palace made a major announcement. King Charles III had officially given his younger brother the title Duke of Edinburgh. At first, it sounded like a touching and generous gift. The title once belonged to their father, Prince Philip, and for many years, royal watchers believed Edward would eventually inherit it. In fact, there had long been an understanding within the royal family that after Philip's death, the title would pass to Edward. It seemed almost like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. But things did not happen that way. When Prince Philip died in April 2021, many people expected Edward to be named Duke of Edinburgh almost immediately. Instead, nothing happened. Months passed, then more months. The title simply sat unused, with no clear explanation from the palace. For nearly 2 years, Edward faced quiet public embarrassment and uncertainty. People began to wonder, had the promise changed? Had plans shifted behind the scenes? So when the title was finally granted on his birthday in 2023, the moment felt complicated. To some royal observers, it did not feel purely joyful. It seemed less like a heartfelt birthday surprise and more like a carefully timed decision. Then came the detail that changed everything. Royal experts noticed that Edward was not given the title in the usual way. His dukedom was created as a life peerage. That means he will hold the title only for the rest of his lifetime. When he dies, the title will not pass to his son. Instead, it will return to the crown. When Prince Philip first received the Duke of Edinburgh title in 1947, it was hereditary. That meant it could pass down to his children. The same rule applied to other recent royal dukedoms. Prince Andrew, for example, holds the hereditary title Duke of York. Prince William became Duke of Cambridge when he married, and Prince Harry became Duke of Sussex. In each of those cases, the titles were designed to continue through their children. Edward's situation is different. His dukedom is the only recent royal dukedom that is not hereditary. That difference carries serious meaning for his family. His son, James, Earl of Wessex, will not inherit the Duke of Edinburgh title when his father dies. Instead, the title will simply end. It will return to the monarch of the day, who will then be free to give it to someone else. According to royal journalists, this decision may have been made with the future in mind. Some believe the title could one day be given to one of Prince William's children. Many speculate it might eventually go to Princess Charlotte of Wales. If that happens, the title would move back into the direct line of the future king, rather than staying within Edward's branch of the family. In this way, King Charles appeared to keep his father's wish, but only partly. He gave Edward the title, honoring Prince Philip's long-held hope. Yet by making it a life-only honor, he changed the deeper meaning of that promise. Prince Philip had reportedly imagined the Edinburgh title becoming a lasting legacy for Edward's family, something that would continue through his children and grandchildren. But under the new arrangement, that vision will not come true. To some royal commentators, this felt like a quiet but powerful message about the monarchy's future direction. The contrast becomes even more striking when compared to Prince Andrew. Despite years of controversy and stepping back from royal duties, Andrew still holds his hereditary Duke of York title. Officially, it remains permanent and could pass down according to traditional rules. Meanwhile, Edward, often described as loyal, steady, and hard-working, received a title that will disappear when he does. Throughout his life, Edward has largely avoided scandal. He has carried out his duties without drama, without headlines, and without public complaints. Yet in the end, the honor he waited years to receive came with limits attached. What should have been a simple birthday celebration became something far more layered, a moment that revealed not just family emotion, but also the careful planning shaping the future of the modern monarchy. However, for many years, Edward seemed perfectly happy working quietly behind the scenes, never seeking the spotlight or public praise. But how did his lawyer manage to get the upper hand against the crown? Was there a secret guide from within the royal circle helping him? Let's take a closer look. The Bagshot Park arrangement. While the public was busy debating royal titles, arguing over who deserved to be called a duke or whether certain honors were fair, something far more significant was quietly unfolding behind closed doors. Royal titles can sound impressive, full of tradition and ceremony, but in reality, they are mostly symbolic. They carry status, respect, and attention from the media and the public, but they rarely come with financial benefits. For example, holding the title Duke of Edinburgh does not automatically grant land you can sell, rent, or profit from. It's an honor, a badge of prestige, not a source of money. True financial power, however, often comes from property. Owning land or holding long-term property rights can provide wealth and influence that last for generations. Long before he officially became Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward, then still the Earl of Wessex, made a quietly shrewd move in 1998. He arranged to lease Bagshot Park, a grand property owned by the Crown Estate. Bagshot Park is no ordinary house. It is a sprawling mansion with roughly 120 rooms, set on 51 acres within Windsor Great Park, one of Britain's most historic and picturesque royal parks. Its location near Windsor Castle in London made it extraordinarily valuable. The original lease was modest by royal standards. Edward received a 50-year lease at an initial rent of just £5,000 per year. That may sound astonishingly low, but there was a reason. The mansion required extensive renovations, with total refurbishment costs around £3 million. Edward personally contributed £1.36 million, while the Crown Estate covered the remaining costs. Once the work was completed, the rent was scheduled to increase to £90,000 per year, an amount that the National Audit Office later confirmed reflected the market value at that time. Almost a decade later, in 2007, Edward's legal team orchestrated a clever new arrangement through his private company, Eclipse Nominees Limited. Instead of continuing with the 50-year lease, Edward paid a one-time premium of £5 million to extend the lease to an extraordinary 150 years, 3 times longer than the original term. In return, the annual rent was reduced to a peppercorn rent, a legal term meaning the yearly payment was practically symbolic, often just £1 per year, used mainly to keep the lease legally binding. This new lease was unusually flexible. There were no strict restrictions on selling the lease. The only requirement was that any future owner must be able to maintain the historic property properly. Unlike other royal leases, which sometimes tie inheritance to specific family members, as in Prince Andrew's Royal Lodge lease, which reportedly restricts transfer to Sarah Ferguson and their daughters, Edward's arrangement allowed him far more freedom. This flexibility meant that the Duchess of Edinburgh, Lady Louise and James, could inherit the lease without legal obstacles. More strikingly, Edward himself could sell the lease if he wished. He had secured the legal right to live in, control, and potentially profit from a Crown Estate property for 150 years. Experts estimate Bagshot Park could be worth around £30 million, yet Edward acquired this long-term control with a single upfront payment and almost no ongoing rent. When the Times revealed the details of this deal in late 2025, it sparked outrage among critics. Some campaigners called the arrangement obscene, noting the contrast with ordinary leaseholders across the UK, who often face soaring ground rents and restrictive lease terms. Meanwhile, a royal 15th in line to the throne had a lease with the potential to generate enormous profit, even though the property legally belongs to the public through the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate did not provide a detailed explanation of how it calculated the £5 million premium for extending the lease, leaving some to question whether the price truly reflected market value. Yet, not everyone viewed the arrangement as improper. A leading property law firm confirmed that Edward's agreement was entirely legal and effectively no different from a standard long-lease property transaction. Even though the house is fancy and royal, the lease is handled like normal property law. From a legal point of view, it's just a regular business deal. But what is Edward's official role in the royal family, and how does this fit in? Let's find out. Counselors of State role. One part of Prince Edward's inheritance that doesn't get much attention, yet is incredibly important, is not a flashy title or a grand palace. Instead, it is his role as a Counselor of State, a position that carries serious responsibility and real authority behind the scenes. While most people focus on royal titles, fancy ceremonies, and public appearances, this role is about power and trust. Power that is exercised quietly but can affect the whole country. In December 2022, a new law formally added both Prince Edward and Princess Anne to the group of Counselors of State, marking a major and historic step in their royal careers. These individuals are senior members of the royal family who can act on behalf of the monarch if the king is abroad, sick, or otherwise unable to perform his duties. In other words, they can temporarily wield the authority of the king himself. It's not just a ceremonial honor. These are positions where real decisions are made, where someone is trusted to handle matters that affect the entire nation. Counselors of State are permitted to attend critical government meetings, sign official state documents, and even receive foreign ambassadors. They can give formal approval to laws passed by Parliament. But it's important to understand that when they carry out these tasks, they are not acting in their own name. They are acting with the full authority of the monarch. What makes Prince Edward's appointment particularly remarkable is that it is for life. Once he has been named a Counselor of State, he remains in this select group permanently. This isn't a temporary assignment or a one-off honor, it is a permanent responsibility. It places Edward among a very small circle of royals who are entrusted to step forward whenever the king cannot perform his duties. The lifetime nature of this position demonstrates the royal family's confidence in his judgment, discretion, and loyalty. It is a signal to the country and the palace that Edward is considered a steady, reliable figure within the monarchy, someone capable of handling sensitive matters with skill and care. The recent changes also highlight the challenges the monarchy has faced in filling this crucial role. Under the previous rules, the list of Counselors of State included Prince Harry and Prince Andrew, as the system traditionally followed the line of succession. On paper, this seemed straightforward. In practice, however, neither man was realistically able to fulfill the responsibilities of the position. Prince Harry had stepped away from royal life and moved abroad. He no longer worked as a full-time member of the royal family and had publicly criticized aspects of the monarchy in interviews and media projects. Living outside the United Kingdom, removed from daily royal duties, it was unrealistic to expect him to represent the king in official state matters. Prince Andrew faced an even greater challenge. Following a major public scandal, his reputation suffered significant damage, and he withdrew from public royal duties. While he technically remained in the line of succession, he was no longer in a position to act confidently or without controversy on behalf of the king. So, what do you think about Edward Lawyer's astonishing revelation? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.